Hey guys, Kelade here. So you guys have been liking the Mythic Plus videos. Today we're going to do a plus 20 Spires of Ascension. It is using the current week of affixes, so that's the Storming, Inspiring, and Fortified affixes. So right here on this first pull, I think generally your tanks are going to pull probably the first like 6 adds, maybe with a Goliath, but this week we do have an Inspiring mob. So it's probably safe to not pull the Goliath, because if you don't get the Goliath, you're probably dead. I'll just line aside in here behind the pull. Right here, pop all of your cooldowns on these guys. There's not much you can kick other than a Castigator right there, right? Who is behind, because everybody else is inspiring. So ideally, you try to get the Inspire down as fast as I can, but I will say standing in this corner as melee with all the storming shit is kind of a pain, but we'll get through it. Just try to take as little damage as you can. Unfortunately, these things aren't kickable yet until the Inspiring is dead. So you just gotta make sure that you're ready to take all the damage that's happening. The biggest problem for cast is the burdens. This burden of knowledge goes off right there. You guys see it literally popped what 80% of the mage's HP, and then the dot ticked him for a cauterize. So very dangerous, but luckily we get through it. And then here, once the inspiring is dead, right, just kick that Goliath fist, the burden, stun it, because I think we didn't have a kick ready. And then once eventually, we settle a little bit, we have a boomy kick for that, and then just rotating kicks between the tank and I on the Goliath. So there are some like additional things here. Also, this recharge anima shield, you can always shattering through it if you don't have like some other way to break it. I don't do it here. I think mainly because I was in rec and I don't want to waste any time in rec casting that when I can just easily break the shield. So we just get this Castigator down. Usually I feel like as a melee in this place, you can use your kicks for the Goliath. And then you just have one of the range to kick the burden, because it's not as often. Though, if you do have a shaman of some kind, because of the shortness of the cooldown of their kicks, they can actually get every single Goliath. So if you have a shaman in your group, then they can just get all Goliaths, and then you can worry more about the Castigator kicks, right? These burden of knowledge is like the one that the mages kicked. The other important thing is, I wasn't paying attention to the first pack had it, but the Mender that you guys see that's paralyzed there, they'll cast like an imbued weapon that if you dispel it, and then you get a weapon that you can, right? I think he'll do it after that cast right here. So he imbues the weapon. When it gets spelled on the right there, you can see me, I'm walking over to pick it up. You just pick it up, free damage, so might as well get it. And also, if it gets dispelled, it reduces their damage done, right? So your team should definitely be dispelling that ASAP. All right, and then you just want to make sure you're picking it up. Unfortunately, he did pull the Inspiring Mob into this next pack. Well, the Inspiring guy was a CC'd, but they're getting some more burdens off. I think if you're doing like hierarchies, or if there's not as much HP, that is pretty dangerous. I mean, the burdens are literally doing 80 to 90% of people's HP. So there's the MB weapon damage. And another thing is, okay, I think I didn't talk about talents in yet, but it's the same talents that I do in every single Mythic Plus: Fresh Meat, Stormbolt, Massacre, Warpaint, Cruelty, Bladestorm, Anger Management. I am using the 2 potency setup of Death and Sanity and Harrowing Punishment. And even if it wasn't for a week, I would probably most likely still recommend those, because your job in a Mythic Plus as a Fury Warrior isn't to do crazy boss damage, right? It's more so to kill trash as fast as you can, right? Have short cooldowns. If you need to cooldown prideful, which at this point, I would say anything that's like 18 and above, you should probably use your cooldowns on prideful just to make sure you can actually get through it. It's getting bounced around by the storming affix, no problem. Just try to do as much damage as you can. Luckily, I mean, the storming, if you have to pick, by the way, between getting hit by storming affix and some other affix, just always pick to get hit by the storming if it doesn't like knock you back into it, right? So let's say if there's some type of like AoE ground effect that just chunks you for 50% of HP, just get hit by the storming. It doesn't do that much damage anymore. The only dangerous part is that if it knocks you somewhere you don't want to be in. And then the other question that I've also been getting is, whether or not Dauntless Duelist is worth it as a choice for Soulbind. Realistically, it's not. Not for Mythic Plus, I mean. It is worth it for pure single target. So right there, I leap and get that weapon. Dauntless Duelist is worth it for pure single target. But yeah, if there's anything with more than one target, it's not as great, because you only gain the value on one target every time you're fighting. Now, yeah, it might change targets once you kill the first primary target, but if your tank pulls like 8 ads, for example, right? You're only getting that buff on 1 ad. So you guys see there, I do pop everything on the prideful because 1, pridefuls at this point take a long time to kill. 2, you don't want to be standing at 20 stacks of that prideful just chunking your group for so long. And 3, you most likely have the shortest cooldowns, right? With the way that your rec works out. Yeah, the healer dies there. I think the healer got stunned. I rally there to make sure that we're getting saved while the healer's dead. It's kind of like the way you use rally in PvP, right? You're just using it to buy your healer some more time. Luckily, tank kicks that cast. All right, we get that guy down, and then here's the boss. The first boss, I think, kind of depends on like how your tank moves it. I generally will stay on the bird, but I was kind of afraid with the way that we were moving to not get cleaved by the boss. But whenever that happened, just go on the bird, because it's easier for you to stand behind the bird, and then your tank can just flip the boss however they want, right? Because you don't want to stand between the boss and the bird because there's a line. You don't want to stand in front of the boss. You don't want to stand in front of the bird because there's all these frontals that are happening. But as long as your tank is like pulling it well enough, you can do okay cleave on these, right? Now you shouldn't be beating any of the other people, especially because I use all my stuff on rifle ads. And there's 2 target cleave where if that ad is upstairs like that, right, you're not going to be able to hit it as a melee DPS. But don't worry, we'll catch up eventually once the initial burst is over. And that's the case that you see with most like DPS specs, especially things that you're grouped with, is that your actual cooldown by itself, if everybody uses their biggest cooldown, your DPS shouldn't be the highest. Where you catch up and where your overall becomes the highest is because you can use your cooldown so frequently that overall throughout the course of the dungeon, you'll end up being the highest. Now, I think the only way that can be beat is that if you're facing against a class that has unlimited AoE targets and they're able to use, right, your tank pulls like 20 ads and they do so much DPS there, it's pretty hard to catch up from that point. So here we're going to the right side. I think he's going to get some cats. I think he's telling the mage to flame strike some of the ads on the right side there. He's going to group these. I think he does take it to the Puritor at the end there. So I'm just not going to do anything at this moment because I know if I jump in and start DPSing, I'm going to pull aggro. And that's another thing is that, like, I don't know why. The aggro is still insane on a Fury Warrior when you're doing keys and stuff. So the other thing is that there's trees here. So it's also deceptive to the tank on what he had. So you guys saw there, I did have an ad. He did taunt it off pretty quick. But yeah, just be careful too, is that like, especially on these packs where the tanks can't really tank these ads that much, that you're paying attention to their threat. And also, of course, the whole like, oh, trees are being very deceptive of who actually has threat. So right there you can see I'm just weaving in Piercing Howl whenever I can, just to help slow down these packs for the tank. And I think this is also a second reason why there are certain keys I feel like we're definitely having the triple range setup is better. Because like for this, for example, oh, right. I mean, the ads are dying. That ad was literally like 10% HP. I pulled aggro, ad turns around, one shots me. Also because the tank died. So obviously pulling aggro, the tank died, but sad. But even then before that, I had to stormball an ad, right? Because it was on me. So not the cleanest of pulls. Unfortunately, I think the tank popped his cheat death very, very early on in the pull, like basically when they first got pulled with trees. So he kind of had to play very, very safe with that ad, and he still ended up going down. I think the ads literally hit, maybe like 2 ads hit him and he died, right? But to be honest, there's not really much you can do. You know, outside of standing there AFK, if your tank just is gonna die and you're 100% next in aggro in line as a warrior DPS. I don't know why our threat table is still so incredibly high compared to the other DPS. It is what it is. Like, yes, I understand rogues and hunters can reset their threat, even mages can, and they can even reduce it, you know, with stuff like mirror images, but it's pretty crazy how much that we're so able to have. So for these skirmishers, all you have to do is everybody, if you stand close enough in melee, I think those 2 range DPS are a little bit further away, but they seem to be okay. If you're close enough, they won't hurl their weapons, which is the one that this thing right here, that's what does the most amount of damage for them. So yeah, if these guys start like disengaging and running around, then definitely way more group damage taken on these hurl weapons. But overall, these guys aren't that bad. And as long as you line of sight right there correctly, you shouldn't have a problem with these. I think a lot of tanks actually pull those ads on the left. I guess this one doesn't. He is going to CC that Skirmisher. We're going to pull the squad leader. Whenever you're facing a mob like the squad leaders, you do want to just single target them down. Because right, the ads around them and tank reduce damage. But if I can still try to cleave them, there's a weapon that got dispelled. Go over there and grab it. I really, really wish this. There's a okay, tank kicked it. Unfortunately, we both kicked it at the exact same time. This swirl that the squad leader does, they just need to make this a little bit smaller. Because yes, you can like barely tiptoe outside of the circle and hit the mob, but it's very, very, very difficult. Also because it's a swirl, you can't really tell where it goes, right? So right here, we're just making sure that we're kicking this champion as much as we can, right? We don't want that cast to go off. I just figure I'm just gonna cleave some condemns off of this guy if he's even alive. Nope, he just dies to the Blade Storm anyways. I think for this dungeon, there's not as many big pulls as I would have liked to take full advantage of my double active trinkets. Right? Even right now, they're both active. Realistically, I probably just should have used the crit one just to send something in. It's kind of a waste to be sitting on both of my active trinkets at this point. And since the crit one is lower cooldown, right, it's less reliant on being able to, you know, I don't want to accidentally like give the healer mana when he doesn't need it, or heal somebody when there's not that much of a threat. Though there has been a dungeon in the past where I actually intervened to a healer and used the cube on them to get the mana on a prideful ad because they were low mana going into it. I mean, if that saves the run, sure, use it to restore the mana, but most likely you just want it for damage because if you can kill them all faster, right, your healer won't need the mana anyways. So if you're like these cool guys, you can just jump off, or you can just take the angel, which doesn't really make it that much lower, but it's another thing you can do. So right here, so the key is also when you're doing this, like whirlwind, you know, bloodthirst, you know, with fresh meat to proc and rage, and then you're hitting that rack to proc the Blade Storm, just to RNG yourself harder, right? What you want to do is the instant you hit that bloodthirst and you get enraged, like off GCD, you want to hit the wreck, right? Because this will give you as much of the Blade Storm within enrage as possible, and it also starts off your burst like ASAP. So I'm not hitting this guy right away because one of the ads there is rooted, and that ad does cast. So that we're I think just a call to pull this guy further back, because even though the guy's rooted back there, if there's anybody close enough, it's still going to cast on them. And we wouldn't want to have any bothering with the kicks. But the guy got to cast off anyways, right? The mage and I both got hit right there. I see that I had the debuff, so just pop it in rage regen, make sure you can survive it. And the mage got dispelled anyways, which is good. Is that I popped the defensive, and then the other guy got dispelled. I think at this point, like, unless you're running with, like, I don't know, some type of, like, either double melee or triple melee, like, these dark lashes, if you can kick them, that's nice. But that internal strife is really what needs to be kicked. Essentially, like, when you're in this dungeon, any cast that's, like, I don't know, kind of like a blue colored icon is probably what you want to be kicking. That's kickable. Like, yeah, these dark lashes like this, right? That internal strife kick it. These dark lashes do chunk pretty hard, and, you know, you want to reduce that as much as you can. But if you don't have a kick for the internal strife and stuff, you're probably going to be wiping and dying. Yeah, so just really focus on those. Tank Kai's. I think at this point, let me see. Do I give him piercing howl? Yep, there. Give him a good piercing howl. I see Kai's ads. Just help them tank these guys as much as they can. And then the tank is also carrying, so it's grabbing a spear. That's another thing too, is that like people ask like, oh, if I only do Mythic Plus, do I need to be Venthyr? Because yes, Venthyr is the best choice for raiding, but there's, you know, benefits to potentially going Kyrian because you have more upfront burst initially, or even Night Fade just because, I don't know, you like the aesthetics or you like the stun for some reason. But to be honest, even if I didn't raid, I would still probably play Venthyr because I just like the playstyle better of being rewarded for like target swapping the right ads, so you can cleave Condemn off of them. Also, don't forget, like, Condemn does have a little bit of damage reduction on the target you're condemning, so there's that. And also, when you look at the composition of a group, especially if you get to the point where you're doing like Mythic Plus pushing, especially with the same group, you do want to have one of every single covenant, right? So you and then have to also look at, okay, so how likely is my group to have a Kyrian? Well, it's pretty likely, right? Like I would say if your tank is the main tank, 9 times out of 10 they're Kyrian. So that's where you're gonna have that role filled. And then Night Fae, there's so many DPA classes that are Night Fae, especially the meta classes, right? Mages are Night Fae, Boomy's most likely Night Fae, Hunters are all Night Fae. So the 3 most popular meta classes are all going to be Night Fae. And then at that point, there's 2 left, right? There's Venthyr and then there's Necrolord. I mean, nobody gives a shit about Necrolord. The buffs are fine. I would say the Theater of Pain buff with the Banner verse is okay. It's good enough. But the Slime buff in Plaguefall is pretty shit, to be honest. I've maybe only in Theater of Pain have I ever seen a group ask for like actual to have a Necrolord. But the buffs you get from Venthyr on Halls and Sanguine Depth are just so much stronger. So here we go. Once again, as the prideful is up, for sure. I'm just see who's the boss is. Next boss? Okay. Let's see if I use my Blaze Storm here. I don't see why I wouldn't use it right away. Oh, the other thing about Blaze Storming and stuff while you're while you have the Storming affix is that you can just Blaze Storm through them. Because it doesn't make you immune to CC, so you won't get knocked up. I'm not sure if it makes you not take damage too. It could just be I'm dodging some of these. I haven't tried specifically running my Blaze Storms into it to see if you immune to knockback, do you take damage. I'm pretty sure you still take damage. Oh, okay, never mind. I thought we were right in front of the second boss. So yeah, I'm holding Blaze Storms for these ads. I think is waiting for the pad to go away a little bit. So the Goliath kick here. I think this is the pack where we're actually kick right away. And this is why it's also important to be on comms. Because I didn't just pop my cooldowns right away. I'm pretty confident the call was for me to get the Goliath first, which means that I was just gonna wait a little bit before I pop all my cooldowns, right? Because unfortunately, as a warrior, you can't kick while you're Blaze Storming. So if you have the priority kick and target, you just can't Blaze Storm right away. So right there, give it that big shatter, right? Right now I'm doing 20k shatters, so whenever you do have the opportunity to use a shatter on a Goliath, it's pretty good. I just don't use it realistically that much when I actually have the wreck going, unless I'm pre-casting it, which in this dungeon I don't. But like if I'm doing like a raid fight on Sun King, for example, you can pre-cast it. So just rotating around here, grabbing that B weapon around again. It's obviously easier, I would say, if you're on Discord too, and they can actually say that they dispel a weapon, so you can look for it. But otherwise, you could always just look at the, I guess the potential mobs that do cast out weapons and see if they're casting it. And then you can just track if anything flies out of them, right? Making sure that for most of these, a lot of these dungeons, just make sure you're never standing next to a tank, right? Because there's always going to be some type of frontal someplace. So you want to make sure you're avoiding that. Wait, was there even an inspiring mob here? I don't know if we killed it or not. I'm not sure why we didn't pull that right away. So there's a weapon on the left. I mean I see it now because I'm watching the video, but luckily I did see it on the actual play too. Get that, kick the Strife, and then kill the Inquisitor and just move on to the next part. So far, I would say for Spires is actually, with all the potential like changes that has been made to all the dungeons, Spires I would say is actually one of the easier dungeons now. The only hard part about Spires is the 3 ads before the last boss on Fortified. Like that's realistically the hardest thing. I mean, the other thing is, yeah, don't miss your kicks, right? If you miss your kicks, you're also fucked. But I mean, that could be said for almost everything. So unfortunately right here, he pops a spear, but I don't have the biggest cooldowns until a little bit like the spear is almost over. And I don't proc a Blaze Storm, but I somehow still almost pulled aggro, which is unfortunate. Luckily the tank kicks the champion right there. Just getting knocked around by storming. It's a very fun mechanic. But the other way, if you guys are curious, like what potentially you can do to solve for storming is just don't invite as many melee, to be honest, right? Because the stormings are going to be, I just feel like if you have like people that are spread out, so let's say you have this, basically this comp, right, where you're the only melee and it's a healer that's ranged and then 2 ranged DPS, it's actually much easier to dodge storming, just when everybody's spread out. So right there, I do actually cancel my Blaze Storm to kick that cast. I think at that point it's worth it. I mean, at max, I was Blaze Storming 2 targets versus somebody instantly dying, which is a big no-no. So yeah, if you really have to, just go ahead and kill those things. So the reason why I popped the wreck there as those ads are dying is that I mean I can have a couple of seconds on this ad, but I did want to have my cooldowns up for the boss, right? Because if I didn't hold that wreck there, I'll be holding for like maybe 20 seconds. And I think the name of the game, to be honest, unless you know huge pulls are coming up or you're really trying to plan your cooldown use, for a Fury Warrior, just get everything on cooldown ASAP, especially with anger management. The cooldown on your wreck is not that long. So it's much better to start having stuff on cooldown, especially when you're running around, travel time. You really just want to be popping your shit as much as you can. And especially if you have Blaze Storm too, which you should, because you're using the Signet Tormented King's Legendary, you really are not at that much of a risk to not have cooldowns or not have enough damage. And even without cooldowns, because of the fact that you can cleave condemns off of mobs, you should always be able to bring some threat. Like, I don't know how every single spec plays, but what I've seen so far, at least playing against the meta specs in the game, if nobody has cooldowns, like let's just say like you didn't pop Reg, you didn't pop Blaze Storm, but like your mages didn't pop Combuzz, right? Your Boomy's not convoking Incarnating, your Hunter's not doing their shit. Your damage as Fear should be one of the highest actually, just because like without cooldowns, your damage is actually okay. It's just everybody has much better cooldowns. Like that's the difference, right? But there I did get hit by the first little Orby that flies out. I just completely forgot. I think when I was doing this fight, when the fight first started, I completely forgot that as a mechanic and I just didn't even look at it. But now that I hit, just keep looking at the orbs and just making sure you dodge them. Now the boss always does this recharge after having 2 of the orbs. So I just want to make sure that you're hitting the boss, facing them. Now this is pretty annoying to do with the storming affix. Yeah, like this is not a fun mechanic with the storming. Because you're dodging the orbs and you're dodging the shit. And if you get knocked into a storming into the orbs, I mean there's little you can do though. If the boss was targetable, I could charge it in Hero Leap. And then alternatively, you can just Blaze Storm it too, right? Like I mentioned earlier, if you Blaze Storm, you're not gonna get knocked up. So right here, just hoping we kill. I think I actually get hit by another one at the end here, just so they can't see shit. Nope. All right. So here, I always get disorient a little bit, but that angel, while it's flying around, you can grab it while it's in the air. I think one way to make it easier too, I've done previously, is you just Heroic Leap through it as it's flying, and it gives you a little bit more vertical for you to be able to reach the angels. But yeah, you can click on the angels as it's flying above your head. So at this point in the dungeon, it's pretty much done. I don't know if we pull last prideful here. We'll see. I think we do, yeah, because I don't think we come back down. But there for Spires, you don't necessarily have to do the last ad or the last prideful, because you can always finish the dungeon with the bosses, come back down, and kill the last set of ads. But you do have to come back down, right? Because you can't save anything up on the very last platform, because bosses don't come down until you kill the last 3. Tank grabs that. He grabs his Hellion. I think some groups also choose to whether or not they pull this guy. I guess just for percentages why you do it, because it is pretty inefficient when you're doing any Mythic Plus to single target one ad, right? Like this, because it's like, okay, well, I guess we pop all our cooldowns, but it was only used to get this much percentage, right? That's the only problem with like pulling pure like single target ads. I know for inspiring, even not talking about this dungeon, but talking about other dungeons, there are cases where you might want to do that because the inspiring ad gets very annoying to deal with. But here, we just get this guy down, and then we're all going to just walk around the right side of the dungeon here, and just walk past these mobs. You don't have to sell through anything here. Just walk right along the right side. I guess don't accidentally not hop over the ledge and aggro them. And then just be careful as you're coming down here. If you get knocked about 2 points to the left, you will pull out those. If your tank does that, you can just walk through. But I just always like door shadowing on the steps there, just because you can get a little bit of a vertical leap there. I still see groups struggle with this, and I don't know why. Okay, so your tanks are going to run through, and they're going to pull the hurlers, right? All you have to do as a DPS or a sealer, you just stand here, and you just don't go. I don't know why. Like, if you go right with your tank, yes, those guys are going to turn around and hit you. But if you're actually out of their range, they won't turn around and look at you. So if you just run back here slowly, as long as you're far enough away, you're chilling, right? And then once they get to your tank, you just charge the ad, right? You know, whirlwind, bloodthirst to get in range, right? And then I blaze storm these guys. Because we are going to pull the boss next, so I did want to have wreck for the boss. And I don't need to wreck these guys, right? The blaze storm is enough. So this boss fight, I would say, is where you can RNG the hardest as a warrior with like good damage prevention. So I do start off the fight popping all my cooldowns, but I am going to save my next wreck for when he does the orb collecting phase, because the boss takes more damage. So right here, Purifying Blast, right? Just spell reflect it, super easy. You don't take damage, you don't take a dot. It's actually insane how much damage you prevent spell reflecting this boss. Now you can spell reflect every single one if it comes with you every single one, but you should be able to for most of these like Mythic plus dungeon abilities. If you get targeted by every other one, you can spell reflect them. So right there, if I got targeted, I would have still had like 5 seconds left, right? But if I can just get picked by an ability every other cast, it's actually so much healing, cooldown, damage prevention. Right here, for example, I get this one, spell reflect, easy clap. As long as that keeps happening, it's so free for almost any dungeon, to be honest. Most groups I've seen, when they do that, they do go on melee. So these guys didn't move as much as I'd like, but it's fine. Have all my cooldowns, right? You want to pop as much things as you can during this phase, because the boss does take more damage while he's in this orb collecting phase. Now, the other thing is you don't want to stand next to your tank, because when he collects those orbs, it does do like a mini AoE. So you want to make sure you get away from your tank. Same thing as when he does the stomp here on the tank. Just don't stand on your tank in this fight ever. Because there's 2 types of AoE, right? One from the orb being collected, and then one from when he stomps. Purifying Blast, easy clap, spell reflect. I don't think I've ever gotten this lucky with the affixes, where I've gone to hit that many times, and we're able to save that much shit from the healer. Like, most of the time I don't get targeted at all by that mechanic, but to have 3 in one fight, I might even have 1 more after this, to be honest. We'll see. It might just be 3. So at this point, I know we're not going to get the orbs again, so I'll just pop my cooldowns here to execute him or condemn him. You guys saw right there, right? I think the healer actually got too close to the tank and got stomped. So that's the thing, like, the stomp is bigger than you think it is. This is actually a relatively wide stomp. Like, essentially all in front of the boss would have gotten stomped. And then as far as for like when the boss does a recharge, it's just when his energy goes to 0, right? And his different abilities drain it differently. So as long as you're keeping track of that, right? That blast takes 5 energy. So if he only does blast, it would have cost him 4. And then the charge stomp does 5 too, right? So just as long as you're keeping track of that, right? Is he gonna die before it happens? Yeah. So I fuck another one. I mean, it's actually so easy. If he puts 4 of those on me. So yeah, okay. So we do get prideful here. So this is the pack that if you are not going to get prideful, like the 5th prideful, if you were not going to get this, you wouldn't pull this pack here, and you would just do it when the dungeon's over. But I think we do get prideful. I'm trying to think why we need it, but it's whatever. I think it also doesn't matter. Like we're 10 minutes 40 seconds left in the dungeon. We're not going to +2 it, right? So if you get the prideful, it's potentially a safer +1. It just makes the last boss faster. Like the last boss isn't dangerous. It's just, I think if you don't have all of your stuff, it's just kind of slow. Plus we are going to lust. It's going to work out in a way where we lust on the 3rd ad here, and there's going to be a little bit of lust extra to hit on the prideful anyways, which would have been wasted through boss's RP. So there's that. As far as for these angels, you guys should always pull the middle one first, and then the left, and then the right one last. Like this, the order that we pull these is the easiest order to do these ads. I mean, the only way that's easier is if your tank pulls multiple of these guys and spears them. That's also possible. If you're doing lower keys and you guys actually have the damage to kill the angels within the spear stun, yeah, just pull all of them and blast them, right? Because they don't do anything while they're stunned. So there's that. If you have a Kyrian, your key's low enough, you could technically just blast them all. But to be safe, we don't. Unfortunately, so the reason why this guy is easy is that this guy only does a frontal. Now, unfortunately, the Boomy in our group put trees down, and with trees, right? They just taunt the ad. So this guy is just flipping around all around, and he turned around and smacked our healer in the face. So just know that when you're fighting these guys, you probably don't want to trees for damage. It's unfortunate for the Boomies, but I mean, you guys see what happened there, right? Your healer just gets bopped for no reason. we get this guy down, and the healer's slowly flying up. It's a very slow fight process. We'll get this guy down, and then yeah, you want to make sure you pull the left one. I wish this wall that's in the back of this room didn't exist. Because it just makes your camera super awkward. Like when I fight Az over here, outside here, it's chilling, right? Because I can zoom out, I can see everything, except I couldn't see the spear hitting me. But realistically, hopefully you can. But yeah, when you get closer to the edge of the room and your camera starts getting blocked, it's hard to see. So if you guys look very, very closely, you can see, like when that spear is on the ground, you guys see the 4 things that comes out of. So when that spear hits the ground, it's not really a circle. It actually is a square. And you guys can kind of see, like in the corners of the spear where the black orbs fly out of it, it is slightly darker. So if you guys are curious and you're trying to look at it, and that's what I do, right? I look at when the spear's on the ground, I look for darker spots in the corners. And if you can identify them, it's always going to be in that square shape where it flies out. Once you identify one corner, I mean, you can then identify the rest of the corners because it's a square. And that's how you can actually like see where it goes. On top of that, once that individual spear is down, it always goes the same direction. So, right, if you find a safe spot, and you see where it is, you're never gonna get hit by it. At this point, I don't know if I might survive it because I have so much HP as a Fury Warrior, but I do survive. Well, I think I got hit by the frontal there or some shit. But yeah, if you're any of these other characters that have less HP, you will just get one shot by this spear. The orb's fine. I'm pretty sure of multiple healers just died to it. On a plus 20 fortified, it does one shot your healers. So, I mean, there's nothing you can do to help them, but maybe you can watch for them if they look like they're dying. So here's the spear, right? Spear just got too much damage as you can. Now, I think it depends on kind of where your group is doing it, but this ad 100% is the hardest ad, right? Because whenever the ads die, they like gain all the other ads crap. So now he gains the power of all 3. So you do want to use as much as you can, right? We didn't lust until now because we had sated. So, but even though it was only for such a small percentage, we just want to get this guy down ASAP. So we lust here, and we're gonna have a little bit of lust for prideful ad anyway. Sorry, so it's fine. This storming, oh my god, that storming whirlwind literally prevented me from doing anything for the last like 5% of the mouse HP. A little bit sad. Like I think storming by itself is not huge. It's just when they're storming, and then there's like other stuff going on that's normally there, it just like amplifies those like crazy. Storming by itself, at this point, it's whatever. It doesn't do that much damage. It's whatever. It's just a knockback part that like knocks you into other shit. That's annoying. Vibration armor, yeah. So my goal for, especially like on a prideful like this, when it's last boss, is I want to DPS this guys as hard as I can with all the cooldowns that I can, to prevent the healer having to use any big shit, right? Because I want the healers to be able to have their big healing cooldowns for the bosses, right? Because you wipe on boss, you're pretty much GG'd. Here we're just pulling this boss. I do stand behind the boss whenever I find this initially, so I don't get parried. But once the boss is about to do his charge, right, I try to aim the charge in a way where it doesn't get super far from the center of the room, right? Because after he charges, he's gonna do this detonation, and you want to be in the circle. So you want to put the boss, especially as a melee DPS, right? You want to put the boss in a way where you can more easily reach the boss and have uptime, right? Now, not everybody else cares about it. I think a lot of range don't care about it because for them, they're like, who gives a shit? But I do care about it. I didn't want to drop my my dark circle like right in the middle of the spear there, so that's why I kind of waited. Just hitting him a little bit more. I actually don't know like whether or not you can sort of like the application of the debuff on you. Like this lost confidence. I mean, you can always spark like just to reduce magic damage taken, which I do press it there for that. So when he goes 70%, right, this guy's gonna channel that. Just get a little bit more DPS on him because you can always just leave to the orb, and then if somebody else gets back there, you can always intervene to them. So it makes it pretty quick for you to get back. I think a guy missed his orb there. I'm pretty sure somebody jumped in the second one, but it's fine. Click on this. Generally, unless you see the guy moving, you always want to wait for the boss to move and then you throw your spear. Right? Like unless like as you're like flying up in the air when you grab the spear and you see the boss shift, you generally, just to be safe, just let the boss move and you throw it. because the boss moves on a timer, right? He's not gonna like, she's not gonna constantly fly around. So let it move and then throw it, and then you won't miss. Except, spoiler alert, I do actually miss the next one, Sag. Okay, so just making sure I get in there. I think I could have like been more dangerous with the tippy toe, being able to hit the boss while still being safe. But like, we got 3 minutes, 30 seconds left. It's literally just, you just don't wipe and it's GG. So I'm trying to not die I don't want to die for a dumb reason here. I think here is, I want to say 30% is when the boss face is, but we'll see. Also, yeah, make sure you don't get hit by the run-throughs. Because even at this level, even though it's fortified, the run-throughs can do enough damage to where if you get hit by, let's say, this lost confidence, and it chains into a run-through, you can still get one shot if you get hit by the two abilities at the same time. So right here, just putting a little bit more damage on the boss. Obviously, when this boss does this, don't pop any cooldowns, right? Because the boss is gonna fly away. So I leap to this orb, grab it. If I can enemy somebody, nope, I can't enemy that guy. Perfect. Drop the orb in. I'm sitting here, I'm trying to collect the orbs. So I didn't realize this until after I did it. So I wait for the boss to go, and I click the button, but I turned my, after the weapon was already casted, I turned my camera to like look at the boss, and shit missed and threw it into ground, Sag. So I just gotta pick it up again. I actually, when I was doing it, I had no idea what happened. Because I'm like, okay, I looked at the boss, I aimed it, I pressed the button, but I think because there's a cast time to throw the weapon, I think as long as you're moving it during that cast time, Sag. That did cause the Druid to die though. Let me see, did I rally? No, I rallied before while we were going through the phase, because I'm like, oh shit, I gotta rally before you die here. Luckily the boss isn't that high and we do have a V-Res. Let's get this guy down. Probably shouldn't have Blaze Storm as he's running away from me, but I kind of just want to did it for the rec procs. But yeah, that's it for this dungeon. Hopefully going through the dungeon is helpful on, I mean, the biggest things for this dungeon is making sure your kicks are in line. And a lot of that is just going to be calling out on Discord who's got what kicks, right? Just remember, if it's some type of a blue kick, internal strife, whatever crap, those are the dangerous kicks. And also the Goliath kicks. And then if you have a shaman, they can get all of those by themselves. Otherwise, right, these last 3 ads are the hardest ads, and that's really it. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I think that DPS there was 6.3k DPS. As always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.